Chapter 1. The Stranger in the Snow. The winter had teeth that year. Mara pressed her shawl tighter against the wind that howled through the cracks in the cottage walls, watching her children huddle closer to the dying fire. Thomas, barely 8, tried to be brave, his thin shoulders wrapped around his younger sister. Little Claire, only 5, had stopped crying hours ago, a worse sign than the tears. They had 3 days of firewood left. Maybe 4 if she rationed carefully. No food except the last heel of bread she was saving for the children's breakfast. The landlord would come in a week to collect rent she didn't have. And then... Mara didn't let herself finish that thought. Her husband had been dead 6 months. Consumption had taken him slowly, draining their savings for medicine that didn't work, leaving her with 2 children, impossible debts, and a cottage that let in more cold than it kept out. She was 24 years old and already felt ancient. A sound outside made her freeze. A thud against the cottage wall, followed by a low groan that was barely human. Thomas's head snapped up. "Mama?" "Stay here," Mara whispered, grabbing the iron poker from beside the fireplace. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was all she had. She crept to the door and eased it open. The wind nearly tore it from her hands, bringing with it a flurry of snow and the metallic scent of blood. On her doorstep, collapsed in a heap of dark clothing and darker stains, was a man. No, not a man. Even in the dim light, she could see he was too large, too perfectly formed. His face, half hidden by black hair matted with blood, was too beautiful to be entirely human, and when his eyes cracked open, they glowed faint silver in the darkness. Vampire. Mara should have slammed the door, should have grabbed her children and barricaded themselves inside. Everyone knew the stories, the immortal houses that ruled the cities, the blood tithes paid by terrified villages, the humans who disappeared in the night. But the creature on her doorstep wasn't attacking. He was dying. "Please." The word escaped his lips in a rasp. "Hunters, close, if they find me here." He didn't finish, but Mara understood. If vampire hunters found him at her cottage, they'd burn it down with her family inside just to be sure no contamination remained. Behind her, Thomas appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide. "Mama, what? Thomas, help me!" Mara made her decision in a heartbeat, the same desperate, reckless instinct that had kept her children alive these past 6 months. "We're bringing him inside. But he's dying, and if we leave him here, we all die." She grabbed the vampire's arm, ice cold beneath her touch, and tried to drag him. He was impossibly heavy, like moving stone. "Please, if you can move at all, help us." The vampire's silver eyes focused on her with visible effort. Something like surprise flickered across his face. Then he gathered himself and crawled forward, leaving a dark trail across her threshold. Together, Mara and Thomas managed to drag him inside and bar the door. Claire watched from her corner, silent and wide-eyed. In the firelight, Mara could see the extent of his injuries. His fine black coat was shredded, revealing deep gashes across his chest and side that leaked blood, too dark to be human, almost black in the flickering light. Silver burns marked his throat and wrists, the flesh blistered and raw. "Silver chains," he managed, his voice stronger now that he was out of the wind. "They used silver, and ash stakes. Got most of them out, most." Mara knelt beside him, her fear warring with something else. Pity, perhaps, or recognition of suffering she understood too well. "1. Still in." His hand moved weakly to his left shoulder. "Can't reach. If it stays, we'll die by dawn." Mara looked at her children. Thomas met her gaze steadily, trying to be the man of the house at 8 years old. Claire had crept closer, her curiosity overcoming fear. "Thomas, get the sewing kit. Claire, bring the cleanest cloth we have." Mara turned back to the vampire. "I've never removed a stake from a vampire before. You'll have to guide me. You're helping me." He sounded genuinely confused. "Why? Because you asked. Because you could have forced your way in or killed us. But you didn't." She helped him sit up against the wall, ignoring how his cold skin made her fingers ache. "And because if you die here, those hunters will come, and my children will die too. So really, I'm being selfish." The vampire's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. Practical selfishness. I approve. Thomas returned with the sewing kit. Mara's hands trembled as she examined the wound in the vampire's shoulder. She could see the end of the stake. Pale ash wood, about as thick as her thumb, driven deep into muscle and bone. Pull it straight out, the vampire instructed, his voice tight with pain. Don't twist. And do it quickly. Mara gripped the stake. The vampire's hand shot out and caught her wrist, gentle despite his obvious strength. When I heal, he said, his silver eyes boring into hers with sudden intensity. I'll remember this. I'll remember you helped me when you had every reason to let me die. That creates a debt. Do you understand? I understand you're delaying and bleeding on my floor, Mara said. Ready? He released her wrist and nodded. She pulled. The vampire's back arched, his jaw clenched so tight she heard teeth grind, but he made no sound, didn't move to hurt her even in agony. The stake came free with a wet, horrible sound, and more of that dark blood welled up. Then something remarkable happened. The wound began to close. Slowly at first, then faster, flesh knitting together until only a pale scar remained. The other injuries followed, the gashes sealing, the silver burns fading. Within minutes, the dying creature had become something powerful again. He sat up fully, rolling his shoulders and examining his healed body with evident relief. When he looked at Mara, there was new awareness in his gaze. Assessment, calculation, but also something else. Respect, perhaps. My name is Nikolai Konstantin, he said formally. Lord of the Northern House, fifth son of the Sire King, defender of the old laws. He inclined his head in a gesture that looked like a bow. And you are? Mara Blackwood, widow, mother, nobody important. You saved my life. That makes you very important indeed. Nikolai's silver eyes moved to Thomas and Claire, who watched from a careful distance. Your children. They're brave, not screaming, not running. You've raised them well. I've raised them to survive. Mara stood, putting herself between the vampire and her children. You're healed now. The hunters are gone. You can leave. I could. Nikolai rose in one fluid motion, towering over her even in the cramped cottage, but that would leave the debt unpaid. And my house does not ignore debts. He looked around the cottage. The bare shelves, the thin fire, the mended and remended clothes hanging from pegs. You're starving. All of you. That's none of your concern. It is now. You saved my life. The least I can do is ensure you and your children survive the winter. He moved to the door, then paused. I'll return tomorrow night. With payment for my debt, and a proposal. You don't have to want it. You need it. There's a difference. Nikolai opened the door, and the wind rushed in, carrying snow and the promise of more cold to come. Lock this behind me. Silver bars the door if you have any. And don't open it again until you hear 3 knocks and my name. Then he was gone, moving into the darkness with inhuman speed, leaving only bloody footprints in the snow that the wind quickly erased. Mara barred the door with shaking hands. Thomas appeared at her elbow, his face pale but steady. Mama, did we just help a vampire? Yes. Will he really come back? Mara looked at the dark stains on her floor, at the ash stake still clutched in her hand. I don't know, love, I hope so. I think he might be our only chance. Outside. The wind howled louder, and somewhere in the distance, bells rang, the hunters returning to their church, singing hymns to ward off the darkness. But the darkness, Mara realized, might be the only thing that could save them now. Chapter 2. The debt repaid Mara didn't sleep that night. She sat by the dying fire, the iron poker across her lap, watching the door as if her vigilance alone could keep danger at bay. Thomas and Claire had finally drifted off in their shared bed, huddled together for warmth beneath blankets too thin for winter's bite. Every sound made her flinch. The wind rattling the shutters, a branch scraping against the roof, the distant howl of wolves, or something worse, echoing through the forest. She'd helped a vampire, a lord of the Northern House, whatever that meant. She'd touched his cold skin, pulled a stake from his flesh, watched him heal with her own eyes. And now he knew where she lived, knew her children's faces. What had she done? Dawn came slowly, bleeding gray light through the cracks in the walls. Mara forced herself to move, to restart the fire with the last of yesterday's wood, to slice the remaining bread into 3 pieces she couldn't afford to eat herself. Thomas woke first, his eyes finding hers immediately. Did he come back? Not yet, will he? I don't know. Mara handed him his share of bread. Wake your sister. We need to gather more firewood before the snow gets deeper. They spent the morning in the forest, picking up fallen branches with numb fingers, always staying within sight of the cottage. Mara kept glancing at the path, half expecting to see hunters or worse. But the woods remained empty, silent except for the wind. By midday, they'd gathered enough wood for perhaps 2 more days. Not enough. Never enough. Back in the cottage, Mara tried to stretch their meager supplies. Boiled snow for water, swept the floor for the 3rd time, unable to sit still, mended Thomas's only shirt even though it was more patched than original fabric now. The sun set early, as it always did in winter. Darkness fell like a curtain, and with it came the cold, sharper now, hungry, seeping through every gap in the cottage walls. Thomas and Claire huddled by the fire again. Mara checked the door for the 10th time, her heart hammering. 3 sharp knocks broke the silence. Mara Blackwood. Nikolai's voice came through the wood, formal and unmistakable. I've returned, as promised. Mara's hands shook as she lifted the bar. The door opened to reveal the vampire, and her breath caught. He looked different. Clean first, the blood and dirt gone, his black hair swept back from his face. He wore fresh clothing, a long coat lined with fur that probably cost more than her cottage. But it was his presence that struck her, the sheer power he radiated, no longer hidden by injury and desperation. This was what he truly was. Predator. Lord. Something ancient and deadly pretending at civility, behind. Him stood 2 others, a woman with pale blonde hair and eyes like ice, and a massive man who looked like he could break Mara in half without effort. Both vampires, she realized. Their stillness gave them away. May we enter? Nikolai asked. Mara stepped back, acutely aware of her worn dress, the poverty of her home. Yes, the 3 vampires entered, and suddenly the small cottage felt impossibly cramped. The woman's gaze swept the room with cool assessment. The man had to duck to avoid hitting his head on the low ceiling. My companions, Nikolai said. Katrina, my house advisor, and Dmitri, captain of my guard. I brought them as witnesses. Witnesses to what? Mara's voice came out steadier than she felt. To the repayment of my debt. Nikolai gestured, and Dmitri stepped forward, setting down a large trunk Mara hadn't noticed him carrying. You saved my life last night. By the old laws, that places me in your debt until the balance is restored. He opened the trunk. Gold coins spilled out, glinting in the firelight. More gold than Mara had ever seen. More than she'd imagined existed. Beside the coins were packages wrapped in brown paper, a stack of fine fabrics, and, she blinked, a smaller chest that might hold jewelry. This is too much, Mara whispered. It's precisely enough. A vampire lord's life is worth no less. Nikolai's silver eyes found hers. This will cover your debts, buy you a better home if you wish, and provide for your children's futures. Food, fuel, education, whatever you need. Mara stared at the gold, her mind struggling to process. This was salvation. This was everything she'd prayed for during those long, desperate nights. This was, what do you want in return? The question came out harsh, suspicious. Nikolai's expression didn't change. Nothing. Vampires don't give gifts without price. Everyone knows that. We give gifts to settle debts. There's a difference. He tilted his head, studying her. But you're right to be cautious. So I'll be honest about my additional proposal. Here it was. The real price. I need a sanctuary, Nikolai continued. Somewhere the hunters won't look. Somewhere I can rest during the day when I'm vulnerable. Last night wasn't a random attack. House Crimson has declared blood war on my house. They want me dead, and they have the hunters in their pocket. House Crimson? Thomas spoke up from where he'd been watching silently. Another vampire house. There are 7 great houses, boy. We've maintained an uneasy peace for centuries, but it's crumbling. Crimson wants to absorb the smaller houses, consolidate power. My house stands in their way. Nikolai's voice hardened. They'll keep sending hunters. Keep trying to eliminate me. And you want to hide here, Mara said slowly. In my cottage. During the day only. I'd be gone before you wake, return after you sleep. You'd barely know I was here." He paused. "In exchange for sanctuary, I'd provide continued protection and resources. If any danger comes to your door, vampire, hunter, or human, I'd defend you." Katrina stepped forward, her voice cool and precise. "Lord Nikolai, I must counsel against this. Housing yourself with humans, especially a widow with children, will be seen as weakness. It gives our enemies leverage. It gives us an advantage," Nikolai countered. "No one expects a lord to shelter with mortals. It's the last place they'll look. Or the first, once they realize you've formed an attachment." Katrina's ice blue eyes fixed on Mara. "Tell me, widow, can you keep your mouth shut? Can your children? One word in the village, one whispered secret, and this entire arrangement becomes a death sentence for all of you." Mara felt Thomas press closer to her side. She put a protective hand on his shoulder. "My children know how to keep secrets. We've had to, and you?" Dmitri rumbled, speaking for the first time. His voice was like grinding stone. "You understand what you're agreeing to? If House Crimson discovers you're sheltering him, they won't just kill you. They'll make an example. Torture. Public execution. Your children watching." "Dmitri," Nikolai said sharply. "She needs to know the risks." Dmitri crossed his massive arms. "I respect honesty. If she's going to do this, she does it with open eyes." Mara looked at the gold in the trunk, then at her children, thin, cold, hungry, then at Nikolai, this deadly creature who'd collapsed on her doorstep and asked for help instead of taking what he wanted. "Where would you sleep?" she asked. "During the day? The root cellar, if you have one. Anywhere dark and secure. I don't need comfort, just darkness and safety." Mara did have a cellar. Small, damp, but it would serve. "And the gold? God, the gold could change everything. How long?" she asked. "How long would this arrangement last?" "Until the blood war ends. Weeks, perhaps. Maybe months." Nikolai's expression softened slightly. "I won't lie to you, Mara, it's dangerous. But I swear on my house name I'll protect you. No harm will come to your family while I draw breath. And if you stop drawing breath, then the gold is still yours. Consider it payment received in advance." He pulled a folded parchment from his coat. "I had Katrina draw up a formal contract. Everything in writing, your rights, my obligations, the terms of our arrangement. I'll sign it in blood if you want assurance." Mara took the parchment with shaking hands. She couldn't read all the formal language, but the key points were clear. Sanctuary in exchange for protection. No obligation beyond housing. The right to terminate the agreement at any time. It was more generous than it had any right to be. "Why?" she asked, looking up at him. "Why not just compel me? I know vampires can do that. Get inside people's heads, make them obey. Because compulsion is slavery." Nikolai's voice went cold. "And my house doesn't deal in slaves. We follow the old laws, consent given freely, contracts honored absolutely. If you say no, I leave. The gold is still yours for saving my life. No punishment, no revenge. You have my word." Mara looked at Thomas, who nodded slightly. Looked at Claire, who'd crept closer to examine the trunk with wide eyes. Looked at the bare shelves and the dying fire and the future she'd been dreading. "I have conditions," she said. "Name them." "You stay in the cellar during the day. You don't enter the main cottage without permission. You don't feed from me or my children, ever. And if I say leave, you leave immediately. No arguments. Agreed." Nikolai extended his hand. "Do we have an accord?" Mara hesitated one more heartbeat. Then she clasped his cold hand in hers. "We have an accord." Nikolai smiled. A real smile this time, transforming his severe features into something almost human. "Then let's get you properly provisioned. Dmitri, take Mara and the children to town tomorrow. Buy whatever they need. Katrina, arrange for firewood delivery and repairs to this cottage. I want it weatherproofed before the next storm." "My lord," Katrina began. "That's an order. These are my allies now. We protect our allies." He turned back to Mara. "I'll return at dusk. Show me the cellar then. And Mara, yes? Thank you. For the second time in 2 days, you're saving my life." Chapter 3. Suspicions and Secrets. 3 days passed, and Mara's world transformed. Dmitri had taken them to town in a coach that made the villagers stare. They'd bought food, real food, not scraps, warm clothing, proper boots. The landlord had been paid, his eyes widening at the gold coins Mara produced. The cottage now had new thatch on the roof, glass in the windows, and enough firewood stacked outside to last the entire winter. And every dawn, when Mara woke, there were signs of Nikolai's presence. A repaired chair she'd been meaning to fix, the door's hinges oiled so they no longer squeaked. Once, a book left on the table, fairy tales in a leather binding worth more than her old life. But she never saw him enter or leave. The cellar door would be closed when she checked it in the morning. A simple iron lock engaged from the inside. She'd hear nothing during the day, no movement, no sound of breathing. It was as if the vampire simply ceased to exist during daylight hours. On the fourth night, Mara waited up. She told herself it was to thank him properly, to discuss household arrangements. But truthfully, she was curious and uneasy. Having a vampire sleeping beneath her feet felt like harboring lightning in a bottle, contained for now, but potentially devastating. Nikolai arrived just after sunset, moving through the cottage door like smoke. He stopped when he saw her sitting by the fire, something like surprise crossing his features. "You're awake." "I wanted to talk." Mara gestured to the chair across from her. "If you have time." He sat with inhuman grace, his silver eyes reflecting firelight. "Of course. Is something wrong? Do you need more supplies?" "No, it's more than enough." She twisted her hands in her lap. "I wanted to ask about the arrangement, about what happens during the day." "I sleep deeply. The sun sleep is absolute for full-blooded vampires. We're essentially corpses until darkness falls again. And you're truly helpless? If someone found you, they could stake me, behead me, burn me." "Yes." Nikolai's expression was unreadable. "That's why sanctuary is so valuable. During the day, I'm at your mercy." The weight of that trust settled over Mara. "Doesn't that terrify you?" "It did the first time, 200 years ago." He leaned back, his posture relaxed despite the topic. "Now it's simply reality. I survive by choosing my allies carefully. And you chose me, a poor widow you barely know. I chose someone who pulled a stake from my back instead of driving it through my heart. That tells me more than years of acquaintance might." His gaze intensified. "You could have let me die, Mara, easily, safely. Why didn't you?" She'd asked herself the same question. "I don't know. Maybe because you asked instead of taking. Maybe because my children were watching, and I wanted them to see mercy." She met his eyes. "Or maybe I'm just tired of death." Something shifted in Nikolai's expression, a crack in the lordly composure. "Your husband? How long?" 6 months. Consumption took him slowly. The familiar ache pressed against her chest. "I watched him waste away, watched the medicine fail, watched him die by inches. And there was nothing I could do, nothing but hold his hand and lie about tomorrow being better. I'm sorry." "Are you? You're immortal. You probably can't even imagine. I've lost people." Nikolai's voice went hard. "My entire house was 300 strong when I was turned. Now it's less than 50. I've buried siblings, friends, lovers. Immortality doesn't protect you from grief. It just means you carry it longer." The rawness in his words surprised her. Mara studied him, this powerful, deadly creature who spoke of loss like an old wound that never quite healed. "The house war you mentioned," she said carefully. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that I'm hiding in a widow's cellar instead of my own fortress." He rubbed his face, a surprisingly human gesture. House Crimson has spent decades positioning themselves. They've corrupted the church hunters, bought off half the human magistrates, and formed alliances with 3 other houses. My house stands almost alone. Why not surrender? Make peace? Because Crimson doesn't want peace. They want absorption. Any house that submits loses its name, its territory, its autonomy. We become their servants. His hands clenched. My father died rather than submit. I won't dishonor his memory by kneeling to the ones who killed him. A sound from the bedroom made them both turn. Thomas stood in the doorway, his eyes heavy with sleep but alert. "Thomas," Mara said sharply. "Back to bed. I heard talking. I wanted to make sure you were safe." The boy's gaze fixed on Nikolai with open curiosity rather than fear. "Are you really 200 years old?" Nikolai's lips twitched. 263, actually. What's it like? Living that long? Thomas, Mara began. It's all right. Nikolai studied the boy thoughtfully. It's like reading the same book over and over. You notice new details each time, but the story stays familiar. The hard part is watching everyone else's stories end while yours continues. Thomas moved closer, brave in that reckless way of children. Do you miss being human? Every day. The admission seemed to cost Nikolai something. I miss the sun most. The way it warms your skin makes colors bright. I haven't felt real warmth in over 2 centuries. That sounds lonely? It is. The simple exchange hung in the air. Mara saw her son's expression soften. The same look he got when he found injured animals in the forest. That instinctive compassion that both terrified and moved her. You can stay as long as you need, Thomas said solemnly. We'll keep you safe. Nikolai's composure cracked entirely. He looked away, his jaw tight. Thank you, Thomas. That means more than you know. Bed. Now, Mara ordered, and Thomas obeyed, though he glanced back once with that serious, too-old-for-8 expression. When he was gone, Mara turned to Nikolai. I'm sorry. He's too curious for his own good. Don't apologize. Your son has courage. Nikolai stood, moving to the window. And he's right in a way. It is lonely. The immortal life sounds romantic until you realize you're perpetually out of step with the world. Everyone you care about ages, dies, turns to dust. Eventually, you stop forming attachments because the pain of losing them isn't worth the brief joy. Is that why you've never married? Had children? Partly. Also because Dampier children, half vampire, half human, are complicated. Dangerous to birth. Most human women don't survive the pregnancy. He glanced at her. My house's fertility issues aren't just about bloodline purity. It's about finding women strong enough to bear hybrid children without dying in the process. Mara's stomach tightened. That's horrifying. That's reality. We're not human, Mara. We can pretend, can play at civilization, but underneath. He tapped the window glass. We're predators. We drink blood to survive. We're stronger, faster, and yes, more dangerous than you. Pretending otherwise would be a lie. Then why follow the old laws? Why ask consent instead of taking what you want? Because taking makes us monsters. Asking makes us civilized. Nikolai turned to face her fully. My house was founded on a principle. Humanity isn't weakness. It's strength. We don't dominate humans. We protect them, trade with them, form genuine alliances. That philosophy has made us targets, but I won't abandon it. I'd rather die as myself than survive as something I despise. The conviction in his voice resonated with something in Mara's chest. This wasn't just noble rhetoric. This was belief worn down to bedrock, tested and held despite everything. You really mean that, she said quietly. I do, which is why if you ever want me gone, I'll leave. No matter how strategic this location is, no matter how desperate my situation becomes, your consent matters. His silver eyes held hers. You and your children aren't tools. You're allies. There's a difference. Mara believed him. Against all logic, all self-preservation instinct, she believed this vampire lord meant every word. The book you left, she said. The fairy tales. Was that for Thomas and Claire? Yes, I noticed you had no books. Children should have stories. He smiled slightly. Besides, it was just gathering dust in my personal library. Better someone actually reads it. You have a personal library? 3, actually, scattered across my territories. Books are one of the few joys that don't fade with time. He moved toward the cellar door. I should let you rest. Dawn's still hours away, but you look exhausted. He was right. Mara could feel the weariness in her bones. But she had one more question. Nikolai, last night when you arrived, Katrina mentioned you forming attachments. What did she mean? He paused, his hand on the cellar door. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. She meant I have a history of caring too much. Of making decisions based on emotion rather than strategy. It's gotten people killed. He looked back at her. She's afraid I'll do it again. With you. With your children. And will you? I'm already doing it. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Good night, Mara. Lock the cellar door if it makes you feel safer. He descended into darkness, and Mara heard the lock click from the inside. She sat by the dying fire for a long time, thinking about predators who chose compassion, about immortals who mourned humanity, about the strange, impossible situation she'd stumbled into. Then she went to bed, leaving the cellar door unlocked. It was a small gesture, a tiny act of trust, but in the darkness below, she suspected Nikolai noticed. Chapter 4. Threads of care a week passed in careful coexistence. Nikolai remained a ghost in the cottage, present but unseen during the day, emerging at dusk with that uncanny stillness that marked his kind. He never entered the main rooms without invitation, never lingered longer than necessary, never pushed beyond the boundaries of their arrangement. But small kindnesses accumulated like snowfall. Mara woke one morning to find the cottage's sagging door frame reinforced, the work done with precision that spoke of inhuman strength. Another day, she discovered her broken spinning wheel repaired, its mechanism adjusted so smoothly it hummed like music. Thomas's worn boots appeared by the fire, risoled with leather fine enough for a merchant's son. "He's trying to earn his keep," Thomas observed one evening, holding up a wooden sword that had appeared on his bed, perfectly balanced, carved with intricate patterns. "Like he thinks we'll send him away if he's not useful." Mara paused in her mending. "That's surprisingly insightful for an 8-year-old. I'm almost 9. Thomas ran his fingers over the sword's carvings, and I pay attention. He acts like he expects rejection, like he's waiting for us to realize he's not worth the trouble." Out of the mouths of children, Mara thought. She'd noticed the same thing. The way Nikolai hesitated before speaking, the careful distance he maintained, the gratitude that seemed disproportionate to simple hospitality. "Maybe he's been rejected before," Mara said quietly. "Maybe he's learned not to expect kindness." That night, when Nikolai emerged from the cellar, Mara was waiting with hot tea and a plate of the honey cakes she'd baked. He stopped in the doorway, surprise flickering across his features. "What's this?" "Gratitude for everything you've done." She gestured to the chair. "Sit, we need to talk." He sat warily, as if expecting trap or trick. Mara poured tea. He wouldn't drink it, she knew, but the ritual felt important, and pushed the plate toward him. "You don't have to keep fixing things," she said. "That's not part of our agreement, I know. I want to." His fingers traced the rim of the teacup without lifting it. "I'm not accustomed to idleness, and your cottage needed repairs." "The cottage needed repairs 6 months ago. My husband was too ill to manage them, and I was too exhausted." She met his silver gaze. "You're not here to be our carpenter, Nikolai. You're here because we offered sanctuary. The gold you gave us more than covers any inconvenience. The gold is debt payment. The repairs are—" He trailed off, seeming to search for words. "Habit, I suppose. My house has always believed in maintaining what we're responsible for." "We're not your responsibility, aren't you?" His eyes held hers. "I've placed you in danger by being here. The least I can do is ensure your home is secure. You've also ensured we won't starve or freeze. That's more than most would do." Mara leaned forward. "But I need you to understand something. You're not our lord. We're not your subjects. This is a partnership. Equals helping each other." Nikolai was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I haven't been anyone's equal in 2 centuries. I'm not sure I remember how." The admission struck something tender in Mara's chest. "Then we'll figure it out together." A small sound made them both turn. Claire stood in the bedroom doorway, clutching the stuffed rabbit Thomas had made her years ago. She looked at Nikolai with those wide, fearless eyes that saw straight through adult pretense. "Are you sad?" she asked him directly. Nikolai blinked. "What?" "You look sad, like Papa did before he got really sick." Claire patted across the floor in her bare feet, stopping beside his chair. "Mama says it's okay to be sad sometimes." "Claire," Mara started, but Nikolai raised a hand gently. "Your mother is wise." He looked down at the small girl with something like wonder. "Yes, I'm sad sometimes, but not right now. Right now I'm grateful. For what? For tea I can't drink, and honey cakes I can't eat, and a little girl who asks honest questions." His lips curved in a real smile. "Those are good things to be grateful for." Claire considered this seriously, then held out her stuffed rabbit. "Mr. Flopsy helps when I'm sad. You can hold him if you want." The mighty lord of the northern house, vampire of 2 centuries, looked at the worn toy with an expression of such naked emotion that Mara had to look away. His hand shook slightly as he took the rabbit. "Thank you, Claire. That's very kind. You have to give him back, though. He sleeps with me." "Of course." Nikolai cradled the rabbit with surprising gentleness. "I'll take very good care of him." Satisfied, Claire patted his knee and returned to bed. Nikolai sat frozen, the stuffed rabbit in his hands, looking utterly undone. "She doesn't fear you," he said quietly. "Neither of them do." "How is that possible?" "Because you've given them no reason to." Mara stood and moved to the window, looking out at the snow-covered forest. "Thomas saw you injured and asking for help. Claire sees you fixing things and being gentle. Children read intentions better than adults. They haven't learned to distrust kindness yet." "Kindness." Nikolai set the rabbit carefully on the table. "Is that what you think this is? Isn't it?" "I don't know anymore." He joined her at the window, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his body. "I told myself this was strategic, a necessary arrangement for survival. But Thomas offers his protection like a knight. Claire shares her treasured rabbit, and you—" He paused. "You leave the cellar door unlocked." Mara's breath caught. "You noticed, every night, that tiny act of trust." His reflection in the dark window glass was stark and beautiful. "Do you know how rare that is? To be trusted despite what I am." "Do you know how rare it is?" Mara countered. "To have someone actually keep their word? To feel safe instead of afraid?" They stood in silence. Two broken people bound by circumstance and something neither wanted to name yet. "Your husband," Nikolai said eventually. "What was he like?" The question surprised her. "Why do you want to know?" "Because he shaped the woman standing before me. Because you loved him enough to grieve this deeply. Because—" He hesitated. "Because I want to understand what you lost." Mara closed her eyes, letting memory wash over her. "James was kind, patient. He made me laugh even when times were hard. He worked himself sick trying to provide, took on debts he couldn't pay because he couldn't bear to see us hungry." Her voice cracked. "He died feeling like he'd failed us. I never got to tell him he hadn't." "You survived. You kept his children safe, warm, fed. That's not failure. I barely managed. I was drowning before you—" She stopped herself. "Before I collapsed on your doorstep, bleeding and desperate." Nikolai's tone held dark humor. "Strange how desperation brings people together." "Is that what this is?" "Desperation? Maybe at first. But now—" He turned to face her fully. "Now I find myself looking forward to these conversations. To Thomas's questions and Claire's fearless honesty. To the way you challenge me instead of deferring. I haven't felt this connected to anyone in decades." Mara's pulse quickened. "Nikolai, I know. I'm vampire. You're human. The gap between us is unbridgeable." His silver eyes burned with intensity. "But for whatever time we have, can we pretend otherwise? Can we be simply friends?" Friends. The word felt inadequate for what was growing between them, but it was safer than the alternatives. "Yes," Mara said. "We can be friends." Relief washed over his features. "Thank you. I promise not to make it complicated." But they both knew it was already complicated. Had been from the moment she'd chosen to help instead of flee. Nikolai glanced at the eastern window, where the faintest gray was beginning to lighten the sky. "Dawn soon. A sound cut him off. Horses. Multiple riders, approaching fast. Nikolai went utterly still, his head cocked. Hunters. 4 of them. Armed with silver and ash stakes, terror shot through Mara. "How do you know?" "I can smell the blessed oil on their weapons. They're church hunters, Mara. The worst kind." He gripped her shoulders. "Get the children. Hide in the root cellar. Don't come out until they're gone. But I can handle 4 hunters. But not if I'm worried about protecting you." His urgency was palpable. "Please trust me, hide." The pounding of hooves grew louder. Mara ran to the bedroom, shook Thomas and Claire awake with whispered urgency. "Cellar now, don't make a sound." They scrambled up, Claire clutching Mr. Flopsy. Thomas's face was pale but determined as he herded his sister toward the cellar entrance. Mara turned back to Nikolai. "Be careful." His smile was sharp and deadly. "I'm always careful. That's how I've survived this long." Then he moved to the door. And Mara saw what he truly was. Not the gentle craftsman who fixed spinning wheels, but the ancient predator who'd ruled territory for centuries. The lord of the northern house opened the door to greet his enemies, and Mara descended into darkness, praying to gods she'd stopped believing in that he would survive until morning. Chapter 5. Blood and Ash. The cellar was absolute darkness. Mara crouched on the damp earth floor, one arm around each child, feeling their hearts hammer against her. Above, she heard voices, rough, male, heavy with righteous certainty. We tracked him here. Blood trail leads right to this cottage, Widow Blackwood's place. Poor thing. Probably doesn't even know what she's harboring. Through the floorboards came Nikolai's voice, cold, imperious, utterly different from the gentle tone he used with her children. You're trespassing. State your business or leave. Our business is cleansing corruption. A new voice, older, dripping with authority. We're church hunters, sanctified by the Archbishop himself. We hunt abominations, vampires, and our blessed silver tells us there's one standing right in front of us. Silence. Then Nikolai with dangerous quiet. I see. And what gives you the right to hunt on Northern House territory? Northern House? Harsh laughter. There is no Northern House anymore. Lord Nikolai died 3 weeks ago. Fell to Crimson House assassins in the southern provinces. His house is dissolved, his territories forfeit. You're just a vagrant pretending at nobility. Mara felt ice flood her veins. They thought Nikolai was dead. That's why they'd been so bold, attacking in the open, tracking him to her door. Interesting rumor, Nikolai said, almost convincing. Tell me, who's spreading it? House Crimson, of course. They have his head as proof. Displayed it at the night court 3 days ago. The hunter's voice turned smug. So whatever lie you're clinging to, vampire, it's over. Surrender and we'll make it quick. Silver through the heart, proper burning, almost merciful. How thoughtful. Nikolai's tone could have frozen blood. There's just one problem with your story. What's that? I am Lord Nikolai Konstantin, and I'm very much alive. The crash that followed shook the cottage to its foundations. Mara pressed the children closer, their faces buried against her shoulders. Above, the sounds of violence erupted. Inhuman speed meeting blessed steel, furniture shattering, men shouting in pain and fury. Silver net. Get the net! He's too fast. A scream cut short. The wet sound of something breaking. Then Nikolai's voice, breathless but commanding. 2 down. 2 to go. Would you like to reconsider your approach? Abomination. The older hunter's voice cracked with rage. Demon, you'll burn for this. Probably, but not tonight. More fighting. The floor above creaked ominously. Claire whimpered, and Thomas pressed his hand over her mouth gently, his own eyes huge in the darkness. Then, silence. Terrible, absolute silence. Mara's breath froze in her chest. Was it over? Had Nikolai won? Or come out, widow? The older hunter's voice triumphant. We know you're hiding down there with your brats. Come out now, or we burn the cottage with all of you inside. No. No. And if you're thinking your vampire friend will save you, take a look. The cellar door flew open, and torchlight spilled down. Mara squinted up, her eyes adjusting slowly. When they did, her heart stopped. Nikolai hung suspended in the center of her cottage, wrapped in silver chains that burned his flesh with visible smoke. Ash stakes protruded from his shoulders, not fatal but incapacitating. Blood, that dark, not quite human blood, dripped from a dozen wounds. But his eyes found hers through the agony, and they were filled with fury and fear, not for himself, for her. Come up slowly, the older hunter ordered. He was grizzled, scarred, holding a crossbow loaded with what looked like a blessed bolt. Hands where I can see them. Children first, Mara's mind raced. 4 hunters, Nikolai had said. She'd heard 2 die. That left these 2, the older one and a younger man who held a torch, his face pale and uncertain. She had no weapons. No training, nothing but desperation and a promise Nikolai had made. I'll protect you. But he couldn't protect them now, so she would have to protect him. Thomas, she whispered in her son's ear. When I say run, you take Claire and run to the back window. Break it if you have to. Get into the forest and don't stop. Mama, do it. She squeezed his hand once. Trust me. Mara climbed the cellar stairs slowly, hands raised. The older hunter tracked her with the crossbow, his expression calculating. Widow Blackwood, you've been harboring a vampire. That's a crime, punishable by death. I didn't know what he was, Mara lied, her voice shaking. Not entirely an act. He said he was a traveler. He paid well for room and board. You thought gold was worth the risk of damnation? The hunter spat. Stupid woman. But we're merciful men. Renounce the creature. Spit on him. Prove your loyalty to God and the church, and we might spare your children. Mara looked at Nikolai. Through the pain etched on his face, she saw a single word in his eyes. Run. Instead, she walked toward the fireplace. Toward the iron poker she'd used to defend herself that first night. I said, prove your loyalty, the hunter growled. I heard you. Mara's fingers closed around the poker. Here's my answer. She swung with everything she had. The poker caught the younger hunter across the temple. He dropped the torch with a cry, stumbling backward. Mara didn't hesitate. She swung again, catching him in the ribs, driving him toward the door. Run. She screamed to her children. Now! The older hunter spun, trying to track both threats. His crossbow wavered between Mara and the children scrambling toward the back window. That moment of indecision cost him. Nikolai, even wrapped in silver, even bleeding and burned, moved with inhuman speed. The chains shattered, not broke, shattered, exploding in fragments of smoking metal. He hit the hunter like an avalanche, bearing him to the ground. The crossbow fired wild, the blessed bolt embedding in the ceiling. Get the children out. Nikolai snarled at Mara, his voice barely human. The ash stake still protruded from his shoulders, but he held the hunter down with one hand, his other clawing at the silver chain still wrapped around his chest. Go! But the younger hunter was recovering, reaching for a silver dagger. Without thinking, Mara charged him, poker raised. They collided hard, both falling. The hunter was stronger, trained, but Mara fought with the desperate fury of a mother protecting her young. She bit, clawed, drove the poker toward any vulnerable spot she could reach. The hunter cursed, trying to bring the silver dagger around, but Mara grabbed his wrist with both hands. You should have left us alone, she hissed. Then Nikolai was there, pulling the hunter off her with one hand. The snap was audible, neck breaking clean. The hunter's body fell limp. Nikolai dropped him and swayed, silver burns covering his chest, blood still flowing from the ash stake wounds. His eyes met Mara's, no longer entirely silver but edged with red. The bloodlust rising. You need to run, he said through clenched teeth. Now, before you what? Save our lives? Mara stood, her legs shaking. You're hurt. You need blood. I need blood. His voice was strained, barely controlled. Fresh blood or I'll lose control completely. Mara, please, get the children and go. I can't guarantee your safety right now. Behind him, the older hunter lay still, his throat torn. Dead. Both hunters were dead, and Nikolai was on the edge of feral hunger. Thomas, Mara called, not taking her eyes off Nikolai. Take Claire to the forest. Hide until dawn. Do you understand? What about you? Thomas's voice, scared but steady. I'll be fine. Go. She heard them leave through the broken window, heard their footsteps crunching through snow, then silence, except for Nikolai's ragged breathing and her own hammering heart. They're gone, Mara said quietly. It's just us, which is why you need to leave. Nikolai's hands were shaking now, his whole body rigid with suppressed need. Mara, I'm dangerous right now. The silver poisoning, the blood loss, the fight, it's pushed me to the edge. If you stay, I might what? Feed from me? Mara took a step closer. Then feed. I'm offering. His eyes went wide with shock. You don't know what you're saying. I know you're hurt. I know you saved my life, saved my children. I know you're in pain. Another step. And I know I trust you not to take more than you need. Mara, you said consent matters. I'm giving it freely. She held out her wrist. Feed, heal, then we figure out what happens next. Nikolai stared at her offered wrist like it was salvation and damnation combined. The red in his eyes intensified, hunger warring with honor. If I hurt you, you won't. You can't know that. Yes, Mara said firmly. I can, and she meant it. This vampire who repaired spinning wheels and gave fairy tales to children, who'd shattered chains rather than let hunters harm her family, who stood on the knife's edge of losing control and still tried to send her to safety. She trusted him absolutely. Nikolai's resolve crumbled. He caught her wrist gently, his touch reverent despite the trembling. I'll be as careful as I can. I know. His lips brushed her wrist, cold, soft. Then his fangs pierced her skin, and Mara gasped, not from pain. From the flood of sensation that followed, warmth spreading from the bite site, her heartbeat slowing, a strange euphoria washing through her blood. She felt him through the connection, felt his agonized gratitude, his desperate restraint, his fear of hurting her. I won't, she thought, and somehow knew he felt it. I won't break. Nikolai drank, and with each swallow his wounds began to close. The silver burns faded. Strength returned to his body, but he took only what he needed, nothing more. When he pulled back, his eyes were clear silver again, the red receding. He held her steady as her knees wobbled. Thank you, he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. Thank you, Mara smiled weakly. What are friends for? Chapter 6. The Cost of Protection. Mara woke to dawn light and the smell of herbs. Her head rested on something soft, a pillow that hadn't been in her cottage yesterday. Her wrist was bandaged in clean linen, and someone had covered her with a quilt she didn't recognize, far finer than anything she'd owned. Memory flooded back. The hunters, the fight. Nikolai's fangs in her wrist. She sat up too quickly and immediately regretted it. The room spun, nausea rolling through her stomach. Slowly. Katrina's cool voice came from the corner. The blonde vampire sat in a chair, her ice-blue eyes fixed on Mara with clinical assessment. You lost blood. Your body needs time to compensate. My children, safe. Dmitri found them in the forest at dawn. They're sleeping in the next room. Katrina's expression didn't change. You were foolish last night. Offering your blood to a vampire on the edge of bloodlust. You could have died. But I didn't. Because Lord Nikolai has exceptional control. Most vampires would have drained you completely. Katrina stood, moving with that predatory grace they all shared. He's been standing guard over you all night. Hasn't moved from the doorway. Won't feed properly, won't rest, just watches. Mara looked to the doorway. Nikolai stood there, his face drawn with exhaustion and guilt. The ash stake wounds were healed, the silver burns gone, but he looked haunted. How are you feeling? His voice was careful, controlled, weak, but alive. Mara pushed the quilt aside, testing her legs. They held barely. The hunters, Dmitri disposed of the bodies. We made it look like they were attacked by wolves in the forest. Nikolai's jaw tightened. But there will be questions. Church hunters don't disappear without investigation. Let them investigate. Mara's voice came out stronger than she felt. They broke into my home. Threatened my children. They got what they deserved. Katrina's eyebrows rose slightly. Brave words for a human who can barely stand. She has a right to be angry, Nikolai said sharply. They put her family at risk because of me. Yes, they did. Katrina moved to stand before Mara, her expression severe. Which is why I'm here to offer you a choice, Widow Blackwood. A real choice, not the pretty lies my lord tells himself. Katrina, Nikolai warned, she deserves truth. Katrina didn't break eye contact with Mara. Last night proved what I feared. Lord Nikolai's presence puts you in mortal danger. Those hunters won't be the last. House Crimson has spread the rumor of his death specifically to flush him out, to make him vulnerable. Every vampire and hunter aligned with Crimson will be hunting him now. I know the risks, Mara said. Do you? Let me be explicit. Katrina's voice went cold. The next attack won't be 4 hunters. It will be a dozen, or a vampire assault team that can tear through this cottage in seconds. Your children will die. You will die, and Lord Nikolai will have to watch it happen. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. What's the choice? Mara asked quietly. Come with us. To the northern house fortress in the mountains. It's defensible, warded against vampire intrusion, staffed with loyal guards. Katrina gestured to the cottage. You can't stay here. This place is compromised, but you can be under our protection. Real protection, not this. She waved dismissively. Isolated sanctuary that leaves you exposed. You want us to leave our home. I want you to live. Katrina's expression softened marginally. I've served House Konstantin for 80 years. I watched Lord Nikolai's father die in a blood war, watched his siblings fall one by one. I will not watch him lose you and your children because he's too stubborn to admit this arrangement has failed. Mara looked at Nikolai. His face was stone, but through the lingering connection from last night's feeding, she felt his turmoil. The guilt, the fear, the desperate hope that she'd agree. What happens to us at your fortress? She asked. We become your servants, your prisoners. You become our guests, Nikolai said firmly. With your own quarters, freedom of movement, protection from all threats. The children would have tutors, safety, a chance at education beyond what this village offers. You would have a gilded cage, a future. His silver eyes burned with intensity. Mara, I can't protect you here. Last night proved it. But at the fortress, with proper wards and guards, I can keep you safe. All of you. For how long? Until the blood war ends? That could be years, then years, however long it takes. He moved into the room, dropping to one knee before her so they were eye level. I know what I'm asking. I know it's not fair. But I'm begging you, let me do this. Let me keep you safe. The rawness in his voice broke something in Mara's chest. This proud, ancient vampire lord kneeling in her cottage, begging for the chance to protect her. But she thought of Thomas's wooden sword, of Claire's stuffed rabbit, of the small life they'd built in this cottage. Humble, yes. Poor, certainly. But theirs. I need to think, Mara said, and talk to my children. This isn't just my choice. Of course. Nikolai stood, backing away as if proximity might pressure her. Take all the time you need. But Mara, please don't take too long. Every night we stay here is another chance for Crimson to find us. Katrina moved to the door. I'll give you privacy. But understand, widow, if you refuse, Lord Nikolai will likely refuse as well. He'll stay here, exposed and vulnerable, trying to protect an unprotectable position. And when Crimson comes in force, you'll all die together. She left, taking Nikolai with her despite his visible reluctance, alone. Mara pressed her hands to her face and tried to think through the exhaustion and lingering weakness from blood loss. Thomas appeared in the doorway, Claire peering around his legs. Mama, are you all right? Mara opened her arms and both children rushed to her. She held them close, breathing in their familiar scent. Home, safety, love. I need to ask you something important, she said. The vampire lord Nikolai wants us to go to his fortress, to be safe from the hunters, but it means leaving here, leaving everything we know. Would we be together? Thomas asked. Yes, always. Then I don't care where we go. Thomas's 8-year-old face was solemn. This cottage is just walls, Mama. You and Claire, that's home. Claire nodded against Mara's shoulder. Mr. Nikolai is nice. He wouldn't let bad things happen to us. The simple faith in their voices made Mara's decision easier and harder simultaneously. She thought of James, her dead husband, who'd worked himself to death trying to provide. What would he want? Safety for his children, certainly. But at what cost? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Dimitri's rumbling voice. Lady Blackwood? May I enter? Yes. The massive vampire ducked through the doorway, his scarred face gentle despite his intimidating size. Lord Nikolai asked me to give you this. Said it might help you decide. He held out a sealed letter. Mara took it with trembling hands and broke the wax seal. Mara, I know I'm asking too much. I know you've already sacrificed more than any human should for a vampire's survival. If you choose to stay, I'll respect that decision. I'll leave tonight, draw the hunters away from your family, and never return. But if there's any part of you that trusts me, that believes I can keep my promises, come with us. Let me show you what the Northern House truly is. Not just a vampire stronghold, but a place where humans and vampires live as equals, where your children can have opportunities beyond survival. I'm not offering ownership. I'm offering partnership, alliance. Perhaps in time, something more. But only if you choose it freely. Whatever you decide, know this. Meeting you changed something in me I thought was dead. You reminded me why I fight, why immortality might still be worth enduring. Thank you for that gift, even if I never see you again. Yours in gratitude and hope. Nikolai. Mara read the letter twice, then looked at her children. What do you think? She asked them. Really think? Thomas bit his lip. I think Mr. Nikolai needs us as much as we need him. And I think Mama deserves to be somewhere safe for once instead of always being scared. Claire simply said, I like him. He's sad and lonely, like us. We should stay together. Out of the mouths of children, Mara thought again. She stood, testing her strength. Still weak, but determination could carry her further than physical health. Dmitri, tell Lord Nikolai we accept his offer. We'll go to the fortress. The vampire's scarred face split in a genuine smile. He'll be relieved. I'll tell him immediately. As Dmitri left, Thomas hugged her waist. Was that the right choice, Mama? I hope so, love. I really hope so. Because she'd just bet their lives on a vampire's honor, a lord's promise, and the strange, impossible connection growing between her and an immortal creature who shouldn't have cared, but did. Outside, she heard Nikolai's voice, low and filled with emotion she couldn't quite name. The choice was made. For better or worse, their fates were bound now. And somehow, despite everything, that didn't terrify her as much as it should. Chapter 7. The Northern Fortress. The journey took 3 nights. They traveled in a covered carriage lined with dark curtains, Nikolai and Katrina riding inside while Dmitri drove. Mara and the children huddled together on plush seats that smelled of old leather and something else. That distinctive scent she was learning to associate with vampires. Ancient, timeless, not quite death, but close. Thomas pressed his face to a gap in the curtains, watching the landscape transform. Forest gave way to foothills, then true mountains, jagged peaks that scraped the sky, their summits lost in clouds. It's like the edge of the world, he whispered. It might as well be, Katrina said from her corner. The Northern Territories are the most remote of all vampire holdings. Deliberately so. Distance provides defense. And isolation, Nikolai added quietly. His silver eyes found Mara's in the darkness. I want you to understand what you're walking into. The fortress is beautiful, but it's built for war. High walls, limited entrances, wards that burn any vampire not sworn to House Konstantin. It can feel like a prison if you're not careful. Is that how it feels to you? Mara asked. He was silent for a long moment. Sometimes, when I'm the only one walking its halls who remembers what it was like when it was full of life. The loneliness in his voice made Claire scoot across the carriage to climb into his lap. Nikolai looked stunned, his hands hovering uncertainly before settling gently on the child's back. You won't be alone anymore, Claire said with perfect child logic. We're here now. Something cracked in Nikolai's careful composure. His arms tightened around Claire, and he looked at Mara over the child's head with an expression of such raw gratitude that she had to look away. Yes, he said hoarsely. You're here now. They reached the fortress on the 3rd night, approaching through a narrow mountain pass that could easily be defended by a handful of soldiers. Torches blazed along the walls, and as the carriage drew closer, Mara saw the true scale of the place. It wasn't a fortress. It was a small city carved into the mountainside. Walls rose 30 feet high, built from dark stone that seemed to absorb light. Towers punctuated the walls at regular intervals, their windows glowing with that same pale illumination she'd seen in Nikolai's eyes. Behind the walls, she glimpsed spires, courtyards, structures that suggested grandeur beyond anything she'd imagined. Welcome to Konstantin Hold, Nikolai said, as the carriage passed through massive iron gates. Home of the Northern House for 500 years. You're home now if you'll have it. The courtyard inside was enormous, paved with black stone and surrounded by buildings that ranged from practical barracks to elegant halls. Vampires moved through the space, dozens of them, all stopping to stare as the carriage halted. Nikolai stepped out first, then turned to help Mara down. His hand was steady, cool, and for a moment she was acutely aware of how many immortal eyes were watching this simple courtesy. "My people," Nikolai's voice rang out, carrying authority that made even Mara straighten instinctively. "I present Mara Blackwood and her children, Thomas and Claire. They are under house protection. Anyone who harms them answers to me personally. Silence." Then slowly the vampires began to kneel, first one, then another, until the entire courtyard was bowing to a human widow and her children. "What are they doing?" Thomas whispered. "Acknowledging your status," Katrina said, appearing beside them. "By declaring you under house protection, Lord Nikolai has made you effectively part of House Konstantin. You're not servants. You're family. The word echoed strangely in Mara's mind as Nikolai led them through corridors lit by those eerie, eternal flames. They passed training yards where vampires practiced combat with inhuman speed, libraries that stretched 3 stories high, halls decorated with tapestries depicting battles and ceremonies from centuries past. Everything was beautiful. And everything felt empty, like a museum preserving something long dead. Finally, Nikolai stopped before a set of carved wooden doors. "Your quarters. I had them prepared while we traveled." He pushed the doors open. Mara's breath caught. The suite was larger than her entire cottage. A main sitting room opened onto 2 separate bedrooms, both with actual beds piled high with quilts and pillows. Windows overlooked the mountains, their glass thick enough to block wind, but clear enough to show stars. A fireplace, a real fireplace, blazed merrily, warming the space to comfortable temperature, and everywhere, small touches that spoke of consideration. Children's books on a shelf, a basket of toys by the hearth, a sewing kit on a side table, even a stuffed rabbit that looked remarkably like Mr. Flopsy sitting on one of the beds. "I don't understand," Mara said, her voice tight. "This is too much. It's what you deserve." Nikolai moved to the fireplace, his back to her. "I know it's not your cottage. I know it's not home, but I wanted you to be comfortable." Claire ran to the stuffed rabbit, squealing with delight. Thomas moved more slowly to the bookshelves, his eyes wide with wonder. "There must be 100 books here," he breathed. 347, actually, Nikolai said. "I raided my personal library. I thought you might enjoy them." He'd done all this, while traveling, while planning their escape, while dealing with a blood war. He'd taken time to prepare quarters that would make them feel welcome. Nikolai. Mara waited until he turned to face her. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you saved my life. Because you trusted me when you had no reason to. Because..." He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "Because in 2 weeks, you and your children have given me something I haven't had in decades. Purpose, connection, a reason to keep fighting beyond mere survival. We're human. We'll age, die, leave you alone again. I know." Pain flickered across his features. "But right now, in this moment, you're here. And that's enough." The honesty in his words struck something deep in Mara's chest. Before she could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. Dmitri burst through the door, his face grim. "My lord, we have a situation. A messenger from House Crimson just arrived at the gates. They're requesting parley under blood truce." Nikolai's expression went cold. "Did they say what they want?" "Yes." Dmitri's voice was tight. "They want to negotiate your surrender. They claim they have evidence of your war crimes against humanity, specifically the murder of 4 church hunters." Mara's blood turned to ice. "The hunters from her cottage. Somehow Crimson had connected those deaths to Nikolai." "It's a trap," Katrina said, appearing behind Dmitri. "They're using the hunters' deaths to justify attacking us. If you refuse parley, they claim you're guilty and lawless. If you accept, they'll try to kill you during the meeting. Then I'll be very careful not to die." Nikolai's jaw was set. "Have the messenger shown to the Great Hall. I'll meet with them." "My lord, I must advise. Your advice is noted and ignored." Nikolai turned to Mara. "Stay here. Keep the children inside. Whatever happens, don't leave these quarters until someone you trust comes for you." "Someone I trust? Who does that include?" "Dmitri, Katrina, or me. No one else." His silver eyes bored into hers. "Promise me, Mara, no matter what you hear, no matter who claims to speak for me, promise you'll stay here." The urgency in his voice frightened her. "I promise. But Nikolai, I'll come back." He moved to the door, then paused. And when I do, we need to have a very serious conversation about blood oaths and permanent protection. Because Crimson using those hunters against me means they're willing to destroy human lives to get what they want. I won't let you become another casualty. He left before she could respond, Dmitri and Katrina flanking him like guards. Thomas appeared at Mara's elbow. Mama, what's a blood oath? I don't know, love. But I suspect we're about to find out. She moved to the window, watching the courtyard below. Vampires were mobilizing, guards taking positions, archers appearing on the walls. The organized chaos of a fortress preparing for potential siege. And somewhere in the Great Hall, Nikolai was about to face enemies who wanted him dead. Mara pressed her hand against the cold glass, her reflection staring back at her, a widow in a vampire's fortress, bound by promises she barely understood to a creature who shouldn't matter but did. Please, she whispered to gods she'd stopped believing in, please let him survive this. Because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, between saving his life and being saved in turn, between shared conversations and small kindnesses, Mara had done something impossibly foolish. She'd started to care, and caring about a vampire, she was beginning to realize, was the most dangerous thing a human could do. Chapter 8. The Crimson Ultimatum. 2 hours passed like centuries. Mara paced the sitting room while Thomas tried to read, and Claire played with her new stuffed rabbit. Every sound made her jump. Footsteps in the corridor, distant voices, the creak of old stone settling. What was happening in the Great Hall? Was Nikolai safe? Had Crimson already... The door opened. Mara spun, her heart in her throat. But it was Katrina who entered, her face grave. Is he... alive? For now. Katrina closed the door behind her. But you need to hear what happened. What they're demanding. Tell me. Katrina moved to the window, her ice-blue eyes reflecting moonlight. The Crimson Messenger was Lady Seraphina, second daughter of their house lord. She came with documentation. Witness statements from the church claiming Lord Nikolai murdered 4 sanctified hunters without provocation. They're calling it a massacre of holy men. That's a lie, Mara said hotly. Those hunters broke into my home, threatened my children. They attacked first. I know, we know. But House Crimson has convinced the church otherwise. They've painted Lord Nikolai as a rogue vampire who's lost control, who kills humans indiscriminately. Katrina's voice went cold. They're demanding he submit to a blood trial. What's a blood trial? Ancient vampire justice. The accused vampire faces 3 challenges designed to prove or disprove guilt. Combat, interrogation under compulsion, and ordeal, usually involving silver or sunlight. If he survives all 3 and maintains his innocence, he's cleared. If he fails any challenge, he's executed immediately. Mara's stomach dropped. And if he refuses? Then Crimson has legal grounds to declare blood war on House Konstantin. Every vampire house that's allied with Crimson, which is most of them now, would be obligated to join the assault. We'd be fighting 5 houses simultaneously. We'd fall within days. So they've trapped him. Submit to a rigged trial, or watch his house be destroyed. Exactly. Katrina turned to face her. But there's a complication. A loophole in the old laws that Lady Seraphina didn't account for. What loophole? A vampire accused of crimes against humanity can invoke the right of witness. He can present a human witness to testify on his behalf. Someone who was present during the alleged crimes, who can speak truth under sacred oath. Katrina's gaze intensified. Lord Nikolai invoked that right. He named you as his witness. The room seemed to tilt. Me? You were there when the hunters attacked. You saw what happened. Your testimony could prove his innocence, or condemn him. Katrina stepped closer. But there's a catch. To testify at a blood trial, you'd have to swear a blood oath. Your life would be bound to the truth of your words. If you lie, you die. If you tell the truth but the tribunal doesn't believe you, you die. And if Crimson decides you're inconvenient, I die, Mara finished. They're not just trying to kill Nikolai. They're trying to kill anyone who could defend him. Yes. Which is why Lord Nikolai has refused to allow it. He's insisting on facing the trial alone, without invoking the right of witness. But that means... It means he'll almost certainly be convicted. The trials are designed to break you. No vampire has survived all 3 in the last century. Katrina's voice softened marginally. He's choosing death over risking your life. Does that surprise you? Mara sank into a chair, her mind racing. Nikolai would die to protect her, would face certain execution rather than put her in danger. After everything, the sanctuary, the protection, the growing connection between them, he was still trying to save her. Where is he now? Mara asked quietly. In his private chambers. He has until dawn to give Crimson his final answer. Katrina moved to the door. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know what he's sacrificing. But don't try to convince him otherwise. His mind is made up. Katrina. Mara looked up. If I testified, if I swore the blood oath and told the truth, what are the actual chances I'd survive? The vampire's expression was unreadable. Against House Crimson's tribunal? Perhaps 1 in 10. They'll do everything possible to discredit you, intimidate you, trick you into a fatal mistake. And even if you testify perfectly, they might simply kill you to eliminate the inconvenient truth. But it's possible. I could survive. Possible, yes. Likely no. Katrina studied her. Why are you asking? Because he saved my children's lives. Because he kept every promise he made. Because, Mara's voice caught. Because I won't let him die alone when I can help. You're human. This isn't your fight, isn't it? Crimson is using dead hunters to destroy him. Those hunters died in my cottage, threatening my family. If I don't speak truth about what happened, I'm letting their lies win. Mara stood. Where are his chambers? Absolutely not. I told you, he won't allow it. Then I won't ask permission. Mara moved toward the door. Tell me where, Katrina, or I'll search every room in this fortress until I find him. A long silence. Then Katrina sighed. East Tower, top floor, you're as stubborn as he is. It's infuriating. Thank you. Mara turned to Thomas. Stay with Claire. I'll be back soon. Mama, where are you going? To return a favor. She grabbed her shawl. If I'm not back by morning, Katrina will take care of you. Trust her. Before Thomas could protest, Mara left, following Katrina's muttered directions through corridors that grew progressively more isolated. The East Tower was older than the rest of the fortress, its stone darker, its stairs worn smooth by centuries of feet. She climbed until her legs burned, until she reached a landing with a single door. No guards, no wards, just carved wood and silence. Mara knocked. I said I wanted to be alone, Katrina. Nikolai's voice came through, rough with exhaustion. It's not Katrina. Silence, then footsteps and the door opened. Nikolai looked terrible. His hair was disheveled, his shirt partially unbuttoned, and his eyes were shadowed with the weight of impossible decisions. When he saw her, shock and something like fear crossed his face. Mara, you shouldn't be here. I know what you're planning. Katrina told me. Then you understand why you need to leave. I won't. Let me testify. The words came out firm, certain. Invoke the right of witness. Let me tell the truth about what happened. Nikolai's expression went hard. No, absolutely not. You don't have a choice. I do. And I'm choosing to protect you. He started to close the door, but Mara pushed inside, forcing him to back up. By dying? That's not protection, that's suicide. She faced him in his private chambers, a surprisingly modest space with a bed, a desk, walls lined with books. I was there, Nikolai. I saw the hunters attack. I saw you try to talk them down before fighting. I can prove your innocence. At the cost of your life? Not acceptable. My life is mine to risk. Not when I gave you sanctuary specifically to keep you safe. His voice rose, control slipping. Do you know what they'll do to you in that tribunal? They'll tear apart every word you say. They'll try to compel you, intimidate you, break you. And if none of that works, they'll just kill you and claim you were lying. Then I'll die telling the truth instead of living knowing I let you face lies alone. Mara, stop. She moved closer, close enough to see the anguish in his silver eyes. You've spent 2 weeks keeping promises to me, protecting my children, giving us safety when we had none. Let me keep a promise to you. Let me stand witness to the truth. I can't lose you. The words burst from him, raw and desperate. Do you understand? In 2 weeks you've become You Matter. You and Thomas and Claire. You matter more than strategy or survival or any rational calculation. Watching you walk into that tribunal knowing you might die, I can't do it. Mara's breath caught at the naked emotion in his voice. and I can't watch you face execution knowing I could have helped. So we're at an impasse." Nikolai turned away, his hands clenching. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. You know there isn't." "Then I'll refuse the trial entirely. Let Crimson bring their war. We'll fight. And how many of your people die in that war? How many humans in the territory suffer when 5 houses descend on the north?" Mara moved to stand before him. "You taught me that leadership means making hard choices. This is one of them. Don't use my own words against me. Then don't make me." She caught his hand, cold, strong, trembling slightly. "I'm not asking permission, Nikolai. I'm telling you. I'm going to testify. The only question is whether you invoke the right of witness properly, or I show up uninvited and create a political disaster." He stared at their joined hands. "You're serious. Completely. You understand the risks? The blood oath isn't metaphorical. If you lie, even accidentally, it kills you. Instantly. I won't lie. I'll tell exactly what happened. How the hunters broke in, threatened my children, attacked first. How you defended us." She squeezed his hand. "The truth is on your side, Nikolai. Let me speak it." He was quiet for so long she thought he'd refuse. Then his other hand came up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the strength behind it. "If anything happens to you, then you'll take care of my children. You'll make sure they're educated, protected, given the life they deserve. Promise me that, I promise." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But Mara, if you survive this, when you survive this, we're going to talk about permanent protection. Blood bonds strong enough that Crimson can't touch you. I should have offered it sooner. One crisis at a time." She managed a smile. "When's the trial?" Chapter 9. The Blood Oath and the Bond. The next 2 nights were a blur of preparation. Nikolai tutored Mara relentlessly, drilling her on tribunal protocol until she could recite the formal responses in her sleep. How to address vampire lords, how to recognize compulsion attempts, how to phrase testimony so it couldn't be twisted against her. "Never volunteer information," he instructed on the first night, his silver eyes intense. "Answer only what's asked. If they try to make you elaborate, say, 'I can only speak to what I witnessed directly.' That phrase is protected by blood oath. They can't force you beyond it." "What if they ask about you? About our arrangement? Tell the truth. We made a bargain, sanctuary for protection. There's no shame in that." He paced his study, tension evident in every movement. "But if they ask about feelings, motivations, anything subjective, that's when it gets dangerous. Subjective truth under blood oath is treacherous territory. Why? Because if you say I trust him, but some part of your subconscious doubts, the oath reads it as a lie. It doesn't care about intent, only absolute truth." He stopped pacing to face her. "So stick to facts, actions, observable events. Nothing that requires interpretation." Mara's head spun with information. "How do you remember all this?" "I've attended 37 blood trials over 2 centuries. I've seen humans testify before." His expression darkened. "I've also seen them die when the oath was invoked improperly. I won't let that happen to you." On the second night, they practiced in the fortress's chapel, a solemn stone chamber where blood oaths were traditionally sworn. Katrina and Dmitri served as witnesses, their faces grave. "The oath itself is simple," Nikolai explained, holding a ceremonial silver blade. "I cut your palm, you speak the words, and the magic binds you to truth. But Mara, once the oath is sworn, there's no breaking it until the tribunal concludes. For those 3 nights, any lie you speak will kill you. Even small lies. Social niceties? All lies, which is why you'll speak as little as possible outside the tribunal." He turned to Katrina. "She stays in warded chambers until the trial. No contact with anyone except us. Crimson will try to trick her into speaking falsehoods." "Understood." Katrina's ice blue eyes fixed on Mara. "Are you certain about this? You can still refuse." "I'm certain." "Then kneel." Mara knelt on the cold stone floor. Nikolai knelt before her, the silver blade gleaming in candlelight. His hands were steady, but through the lingering connection from when he'd fed from her, she felt his fear. "Give me your hand," he said quietly. She extended her right hand. Nikolai cradled it gently, then drew the blade across her palm, quick, clean. Blood welled up, bright red against pale skin. "Speak after me," he instructed. "I, Mara Blackwood, swear by blood and bone. I, Mara Blackwood, swear by blood and bone, to speak only truth before the blood court, to speak only truth before the blood court, from this oath's binding until its release, from this oath's binding until its release, or let my life be forfeit for falsehood spoken." Mara's voice didn't waver. "Or let my life be forfeit for falsehood spoken." The moment the words left her lips, fire ignited in her veins. Not the warmth of Nikolai's feeding, but burning, searing agony that radiated from her cut palm through every nerve. Mara gasped, trying not to scream, as the oath carved itself into her very soul. She felt it settle, an awareness of truth and lies, a new sense that weighed every word before it left her mouth. "It's done," Nikolai said, his voice tight. He pressed his own palm to hers, and cool relief flooded through her, dampening the pain. "I'm sorry. I know it hurts." "Worth it," Mara managed through clenched teeth. "If it saves you. If it saves us both." He helped her stand, keeping her steady as she swayed. "How do you feel?" Mara tested the sensation. "Strange. Like there's a weight on my tongue, like some part of me is listening to every thought, measuring it. That's the oath. It'll feel heavy at first, but you'll adjust." He bandaged her palm with gentle efficiency. "Try a simple lie. Tell me my eyes are brown. Your eyes are—" Mara stopped. The words stuck in her throat, choking her. She couldn't speak them. Physically couldn't force them past her lips. "I can't." "Good. The oath is working properly." Nikolai's relief was palpable. "Now try a truth. Tell me something you know absolutely." "My children are safe in this fortress." The words flowed easily, naturally. No resistance at all. "Perfect." He turned to Dmitri and Katrina. "Get her to the warded chambers. No visitors except by my direct order. And double the guard. If Crimson tries anything before the trial, I want them stopped immediately." As they prepared to leave, Mara caught Nikolai's arm. "Wait, there's something I need to say. Well, I still can." His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "The oath binds me to truth, which means I can't hide anymore." She took a breath, feeling the weight of the admission. "These past weeks with you, they've changed something in me. You're not just the vampire who offered sanctuary. You're more important. And after the trial, when the oath is lifted, I might lie to protect myself, might hide what I feel, but right now I can't lie." Nikolai had gone very still. "Mara, I care about you." The words came out clear, true, unburdened by doubt. "More than I should, more than is wise. But it's the truth." Silence filled the chapel. Katrina and Dmitri had the grace to look away, though their vampire hearing meant they'd caught every word. "You can't say things like that," Nikolai said roughly. "Not when you're bound by oath. Not when you might not mean it without the magic forcing honesty. But I do mean it." "That's the point." Mara stepped closer. "Tomorrow we go to trial. One of us might die. Both of us might. I needed you to know the truth before that happens." Something broke in Nikolai's carefully maintained control. He pulled her against him, his arms tight around her shoulders, his face pressed against her hair. "I care too," he whispered, so quietly she almost didn't hear. "Since that first night when you pulled a stake from my back instead of driving it through my heart. Since you offered your blood to save me. Since your children looked at me without fear." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "But you're human, Mara. You'll age, die, leave me alone again. Caring means guaranteeing my own heartbreak. So we're both fools then." She managed a shaky smile. "Caring about people we can't keep. Fools," he agreed. "But perhaps that's better than being alone." He bent his head, and for a breathless moment Mara thought he might kiss her, but he stopped, his lips barely an inch from hers, as if an invisible barrier held him back. "After the trial," he said, "if we both survive, then we can talk about what this means, what we might be to each other. And if only one of us survives, then that one carries forward, lives, remembers." His hand cupped her face. "But let's not give Crimson the satisfaction of killing either of us." "Agreed?" "Agreed." Katrina cleared her throat pointedly. "My lord, it's nearly dawn. Lady Mara needs rest, and you need to prepare your own testimony." Reluctantly, Nikolai released her. Go, sleep if you can. Tomorrow night we travel to the blood court. As Dmitri and Katrina escorted her to the warded chambers, Mara felt the oath's weight settle more firmly. Every word she'd spoken was absolute truth. She did care about Nikolai more than was safe or sensible. And now he knew it. Knew she'd risk death to save him. Knew that somewhere between sanctuary and siege, between fear and trust, she'd done the impossible. She'd fallen for a vampire. In her quarters, Thomas and Claire were already asleep. Mara stood at the window, watching the pre-dawn sky lighten to gray. Somewhere below, Nikolai was likely doing the same, watching the sunrise he could never feel, preparing for a trial that could end everything. Please, she whispered to the coming dawn. Let us both survive this. Let there be an after. But dawn, like the blood oath, offered no promises. Only the cold certainty of truth, whatever that truth might be, and in one night, they would face it together. Chapter 10. The Blood Court's verdict. The Blood Court met in neutral territory, an ancient amphitheater carved into a mountain, open to the night sky and ringed with torches that burned with eternal flame. Mara had never seen so many vampires in one place. Hundreds of them filled the stone seats, representatives from all 7 great houses. Their eyes tracked her as Nikolai led her to the center of the arena floor, their stillness more unnerving than any threat. She was the only human present, the only mortal heartbeat in a gathering of immortals. Don't look at them, Nikolai murmured. Eyes on me or on the tribunal, nowhere else. The tribunal sat on an elevated platform. 3 ancient vampires so old their skin looked like parchment stretched over bone. The center judge wore crimson robes. House Crimson's representative, Mara realized with sinking dread. Let the blood trial commence, the center judge intoned, his voice carrying despite its papery quality. Lord Nikolai Konstantin stands accused of murdering 4 sanctified church hunters without provocation. How does the accused plead? Not guilty. Nikolai's voice rang clear. I acted in defense of innocence. I invoke the right of witness and present Mara Blackwood, who was present during the alleged crimes. The center judge's eyes, pale as winter ice, fixed on Mara. The witness bears a blood oath? Sworn 2 nights past in proper form, witnessed by my house advisors. Then let her speak. The judge gestured Mara forward. Mara Blackwood, you understand the weight of the oath you carry? That falsehood means death? I understand. Mara's voice was steadier than she felt. Then tell this court, did Lord Nikolai murder 4 church hunters in your presence? The amphitheater went silent, hundreds of vampires leaning forward to hear. The oath hummed in Mara's blood, weighing her words before they formed. No, she said clearly. He did not murder them. He killed them in defense of my children and myself. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The center judge raised a hand for silence. Explain the distinction. The hunters broke into my cottage after midnight. They threatened my children with burning. They attacked Lord Nikolai with silver chains and blessed stakes, intending to kill him. Mara kept her gaze steady. Lord Nikolai tried to negotiate. He offered them the chance to leave. They refused and attacked. He defended himself and us. That's not murder. That's survival. You claim the hunters initiated violence? I witnessed it directly. They were the aggressors in every sense. The judge to the left, wearing deep blue robes, leaned forward. Why would church hunters attack a poor widow's cottage in the middle of the night? Because they were tracking Lord Nikolai. He'd been sheltering in my cellar during the day. So you admit to harboring a vampire? The blue-robed judge's voice sharpened. A criminal act in itself under church law. I admit to accepting an offer of mutual protection. Lord Nikolai needed sanctuary. I needed resources to keep my children from starving. We made a bargain, fairly negotiated, with no compulsion used. The oath confirmed every word as truth. Is survival a crime now? More murmurs. The third judge, in silver robes, spoke for the first time, her voice ancient and dry as autumn leaves. You speak boldly for a human standing before the blood court. I speak truthfully. The oath compels nothing less. Indeed. The silver-robed judge studied her. Tell us, Mara Blackwood, do you fear Lord Nikolai? It was a trap question. Mara felt it through the oath's weight. Answer wrong and she'd condemn him. Answer right, but unconvincingly, and she'd condemn herself. I did fear him, Mara said carefully. The first night, when he collapsed bleeding on my doorstep, I was terrified. He was vampire, everything I'd been taught to flee from. She paused, letting the truth settle. But then he asked for help instead of taking what he wanted. He kept every promise he made. He protected my children when hunters came. And somewhere in those weeks, fear transformed into trust. Trust. The silver-robed judge's expression was unreadable. You trust a predator? I trust a person who honors his word. What he is matters less than who he chooses to be. Nikolai's hand twitched at his side, barely visible, but Mara caught it. She was walking a knife's edge, defending him without seeming biased, speaking truth without revealing the depth of what had grown between them. The center judge leaned forward. One final question, Mara Blackwood. Do you love Lord Nikolai? The amphitheater went absolutely silent. Mara felt the oath's weight crash over her. This was the dangerous question Nikolai had warned about. Subjective truth, feelings that couldn't be measured or proven. Answer yes and they'd claim bias. Answer no and it would be a lie that killed her. But there was a third option. I don't know, Mara said, and felt the oath accepted as truth. I know I care about him. I know I'd risk my life to save his. I'm doing that right now. I know he matters to me more than is wise or safe. But love? She met the judge's icy gaze. Love takes time to understand. Ask me again in a year, and I might have an answer. Today, all I can tell you is the truth of what I witnessed in my cottage. Everything else is still being written. The judge sat back, something like respect flickering across his ancient features. The witness has spoken truth under blood oath. Her testimony is accepted as factual record. Relief flooded through Mara, so intense her knees nearly buckled. Nikolai's hand caught her elbow, steadying her with cool fingers. However, the center judge continued, testimony must be weighed against context. Lady Seraphina of House Crimson, present your evidence. A beautiful vampire rose from the front row. Dark hair, crimson gown, eyes like polished garnets. This was the Crimson Messenger who delivered the ultimatum. The witness speaks truth about the hunter's attack, Seraphina said, her voice musical. But she omits crucial context. Those hunters were tracking Lord Nikolai because he'd already killed a dozen of their brothers over the past month. He's been waging a private war against the church, destabilizing human-vampire relations across 3 territories. That's a lie, Nikolai said sharply. Is it? Shall we summon witnesses from House Mordain? They'll testify to seeing you in battle with church forces in the southern provinces. I fought in self-defense. You fought. That's the point. Seraphina smiled coldly. You've become dangerous, Lord Nikolai. Unstable. The evidence suggests you're using humans like Mrs. Blackwood as shields, while you wage war against mortal authorities. I've protected humans, not used them. Then explain why the widow's cottage was targeted. Why hunters tracked you there specifically. Seraphina turned to the tribunal. I submit that Lord Nikolai deliberately endangered this family to create sympathetic witnesses. He used them. No. Mara's voice cut through the argument. No, that's not what happened. The center judge's eyes fixed on her. The witness will remain silent unless questioned directly. Then question me directly, Mara demanded, pushing past Nikolai's restraining hand. Ask me if he used us. Ask me if he endangered us deliberately. Ask me anything, and I'll answer under oath." A ripple of shock moved through the amphitheater. Humans didn't challenge blood court protocol. They certainly didn't demand to testify further. But the silver-robed judge smiled faintly. "Very well. Mara Blackwood, did Lord Nikolai deliberately endanger you or your children?" "No. He tried to leave multiple times to draw danger away from us. I convinced him to stay. Why would you do that?" "Because he'd saved my life first. Because my children were starving, and he offered help when no one else would. Because—" Mara stopped, feeling the weight of the oath. "Because I'd rather shelter someone trying to survive than stand aside and let cruelty win." Silence. Then the silver-robed judge spoke again. "This court has heard sufficient testimony. We will deliberate." The three judges rose and withdrew to a chamber behind the platform. The amphitheater erupted in whispered conversations. Nikolai pulled Mara close, his voice low and urgent. "You shouldn't have challenged them. That was incredibly dangerous. So is letting Crimson paint you as a villain without fighting back." Mara's hands were shaking now, adrenaline fading. "I spoke truth. That's all the oath allows. You spoke truth that revealed how much you care. Crimson will use that against us. Let them. I'm not ashamed of it." Before Nikolai could respond, the judges returned. The speed was unusual. Trials typically deliberated for hours. The center judge's expression was grave as he addressed the assembled vampires. "The blood court has reached a verdict. Lord Nikolai Konstantin is found, not guilty of murder. The evidence shows he acted in legitimate self-defense." A pause. "However, given the instability in human-vampire relations and the ongoing conflicts, with House Crimson, this court imposes conditions on Lord Nikolai's freedom." Mara's stomach tightened. Conditions. That couldn't be good. "First, Lord Nikolai will submit to a formal peace negotiation with House Crimson, mediated by this court, within 1 lunar cycle. Second, he will make reparations to the church for the loss of their hunters. Gold and formal apology. Third, the judge's eyes found Mara. The human witness, Mara Blackwood, has demonstrated remarkable courage and integrity. To ensure her continued safety from retaliation, this court orders that she be placed under formal blood protection, bound directly to Lord Nikolai through ancient right. She and her children become House Konstantin in all legal senses. This is not negotiable. The binding will occur at the next full moon. The amphitheater exploded with reaction. Shock, outrage, fascination. Mara stood frozen, trying to process what she'd just heard. Blood protection. Bound to Nikolai. House Konstantin. Permanent. Nikolai's hand found hers, his grip tight. Through the touch, she felt his complex storm of emotions. Relief, fear, guilt. "Hope. Court is adjourned," the center judge declared. As vampires began filing out, Lady Serafina approached, her garnet eyes sharp with calculation. "Clever, Lord Nikolai. Very clever, using the trial to force a formal binding. Now Mrs. Blackwood can't testify against you in future proceedings." "That's not why," Nikolai began. "Isn't it?" Serafina's smile was razor sharp. "Enjoy your victory. But remember, peace negotiations mean you'll be on Crimson territory, under our rules. We'll finish what we started, one way or another." She swept away in a swirl of crimson silk. Mara looked up at Nikolai. "What does blood protection mean?" "Bound to you, how?" "It means—" He closed his eyes briefly. "It means exactly what you think. A permanent bond. Your life tied to mine through blood magic. You'll age slower, gain some vampire resilience, be protected under house law. But Mara, you'll also be mine in the eyes of every vampire house. Bound until death. And if I refuse, then Crimson or another house will eventually kill you to eliminate a witness. The court knows this. They're forcing protection because it's the only way to keep you safe." Mara should have been terrified, trapped, furious at having her choice stolen. Instead, she felt strangely calm. "When's the next full moon?" 3 weeks. Then we have 3 weeks to figure out what being bound to each other actually means." She squeezed his hand. together. Nikolai's expression cracked into something like wonder. "You're not angry? Ask me again in 3 weeks. Right now, I'm just relieved we're both alive." As they left the blood court, walking into the cold mountain night, Mara realized the trial had answered one question while raising a dozen others. They'd survived. Both of them. But the real test, learning to live bound together, vampire and human, ancient and mortal, was only beginning.